This was the greatest victory the Luo God camp had achieved in the past 10 years. However, Xiaoyan had already been locked onto by the Blood God clan. If you enjoy my way of explaining and storytelling, don't forget to like and subscribe. It really motivates me to keep creating. Continuing from the previous chapter, a violent blood-red aura suddenly erupted from Huang Yunpo's body, roaring into the heavens like a crimson pillar that pierced the sky itself. The air trembled violently as waves of oppressive energy spread outward in all directions, distorting space and shaking the battlefield to its core. In the blink of an eye, his aura did not merely recover, it surged wildly. In an instant, it returned to the level of an 8th grade supreme, then continued to climb without restraint, finally stabilizing at the very peak of the 8th grade supreme realm. The terrifying pressure rolling off Huang Yunpo caused Xiaoyan's pupils to contract slightly. His expression grew heavy, and a rare trace of solemnity appeared on his face. He had not expected that even after his divine artifact had been shattered and his supreme Dharma body destroyed, Huang Yunpo could still forcefully unleash such a fearsome power. At this moment, Huang Yunpo's strength was unquestionably far greater than it had ever been before. From afar, Luo Jutian and the others stared in disbelief. The moment they sensed the violent fluctuation of energy, their hearts sank. They instantly realized what Huang Yunpo had done. He had ignited his essence blood, burning away his own life force to forcibly activate the Blood God clan's forbidden art, the Blood God technique. Shock and alarm surged through their minds. This was a desperate suicidal move. Once used, there would be no turning back. Suddenly, Huang Yunpo's figure flickered, vanishing from his original position like a phantom. Before anyone could even react, he had already appeared directly in front of Xiaoyan. Without the slightest hesitation, Huang Yunpo thrust his palm forward. The strike carried an overwhelming torrent of blood-red energy, its power vastly surpassing all of his previous attacks. The space before him shattered inch by inch under the terrifying force. If this palm struck head-on, even a cultivator who had just stepped into the 8th grade supreme realm would be gravely injured, if not outright crippled. Facing this earth-shaking attack, Xiaoyan did not retreat. Instead, he calmly raised his palm and slowly opened his fingers. Within his hand, several medicinal pills had appeared at some unknown moment. Each pill radiated vast surging energy, their auras deep and profound, as though they contained oceans of power sealed within. A faint smile tugged at the corner of Xiaoyan's lips as he looked straight at the charging Huang Yunpo. "Since you can forcibly elevate your strength for a short time," he said evenly, his voice calm and unhurried, "then I'll use the same method to deal with you." The clash of two desperate powers was about to erupt. Under the horrified gazes of the crowd, Xiaoyan did not hesitate in the slightest. With a calm, almost ruthless decisiveness, he tossed all the medicinal pills in his palm into his mouth and swallowed them whole. Boom! A thunderous explosion of spiritual power erupted from within his body. Flames and energy surged wildly as an overwhelming aura burst forth, sweeping across the heavens like a raging tide. In that instant, Xiaoyan's cultivation shattered its limits. From the 6th grade supreme realm directly into the 7th grade supreme realm, the sky trembled. Space warped violently under the sudden surge of power. Yellow Springs palm. Xiaoyan roared as he struck forward with a domineering palm strike. Boundless flames condensed in mid-air, forming a gigantic flaming palm that carried the aura of judgment itself, as if it sought to drag all things into the depths of the underworld. The massive flame palm collided head-on with the crimson blood palm. Boom! A deafening explosion echoed through the heavens and earth. A terrifying energy storm erupted at the point of impact, spreading outward in a devastating shockwave. The surrounding mountain range was ripped apart, mercilessly, countless peaks collapsing and turning into fine dust. The sky cracked open as enormous spatial fissures spread like spiderwebs across the air. Aside from Gulo Shan and Luo Jutian experts, whose cultivation exceeded the 5th grade supreme realm, all other supreme experts were forced to retreat frantically. None of them dared remain too close to the battlefield. Everyone present understood clearly. This strike was Huang Yunpo's full-power attack after activating the Blood God clan's forbidden secret technique. And that young man before him was also holding nothing back. Luo Jiutian and the others stared anxiously into the sky, their hearts clenched. Not even they dared to breathe too loudly. At first, the massive flame palm stood firm, roaring defiantly against the blood-red palm. However, under the relentless suppression of the crimson blood palm, it gradually began to falter. Fine cracks slowly spread across the surface of the flame palm. Crack, crack, crack. Ha ha ha. Huang Yunpo burst into wild, unrestrained laughter, his eyes bloodshot and filled with madness. No matter how many tricks you have, before absolute crushing power, everything is meaningless. As he laughed, his hands moved rapidly, forming one seal after another. His spiritual power poured out endlessly, like a raging river, surging into the crimson blood palm. The blood palm swelled once more, its aura growing even more violent and oppressive. Bang! Under the overwhelming pressure, the flame palm could no longer hold on. It shattered completely, turning into countless fragments of flame that were devoured by the blood-red light. Seeing this scene, the expressions of Luo Jiutian and the others changed drastically. Not good. Luo Jiutian shouted urgently, his heart sinking to the bottom. But just as his voice rang out, a sudden scorching fluctuation surged from the center of the explosion. A streak of blazing flame shot forth from the shattered remnants of the flame palm, tearing through the chaotic energy storm like a comet ripping through the heavens. Within that streak of light stood Xiaoyan. His robes were scorched, yet his posture remained straight and unwavering. Without pause, 2 more medicinal pills appeared in his hand, their surfaces flowing with profound runes and dense medicinal essence. Xiaoyan swallowed them in one swift motion. Boom! A vast surge of power erupted from his body once more. His previously depleted aura surged back violently, instantly returning to its absolute peak. Waves of scorching flame rolled outward, forcing the surrounding chaotic spiritual power to retreat. The raging inferno filling the sky suddenly receded, as though drawn back by an invisible force. In Xiaoyan's palm, a tiny point of light quietly bloomed. It was small, no larger than a grain of sand, yet it radiated an indescribable pressure. Within that speck of light seemed to exist an entire world of fire, endlessly compressing, endlessly condensing. Xiaoyan's gaze was calm and indifferent. With a gentle flick of his finger, the tiny point of light shot forward. It met the descending crimson blood palm head-on. Boom! There was no prolonged collision. The moment they touched, the crimson blood palm collapsed completely, disintegrating into nothingness as if erased by an invisible force. Space itself failed to withstand the impact, vast regions of it shattered, folding inward and collapsing into countless fragments. Terrifying energy storms raged wildly, shredding the battlefield into broken streams of spiritual power that howled through the void. The final trump card of the Blood God technique was Annihilated. Blood God clan territory. Far away beyond countless layers of space lay the Blood God domain. This was the ancestral territory of the Blood God clan, one of the 4 great god clans of the Western Heaven domain. The entire region was soaked in a deep crimson hue, as though the heavens and earth themselves had been dyed by endless blood over countless ages. At the deepest part of the domain existed a vast crimson world formed of 5 enormous continents. They were known as the Blood God 5 continents, the clan's inner domain and absolute core. Majestic palaces towered everywhere, ancient and solemn. Each structure was etched with profound blood-patterned runes, exuding an oppressive aura that testified to the clan's ancient heritage. Covering every continent were gigantic light barriers that stretched hundreds of thousands of meters into the sky, layered upon layered like an impenetrable fortress. Behind them stood an even more terrifying existence, a colossal superlight barrier millions of meters tall like a blood-red divine wall separating heaven and earth. Even supreme experts would tremble before its overwhelming pressure. Suddenly, The space before this colossal barrier twisted violently. Ripples spread outward as if an invisible hand had stirred the void. A blood-red beam abruptly pierced through space, tearing open a spatial passage. It passed straight through the superlight barrier, without slowing, entering the inner domain of the Blood God clan. Within the barrier lay a vast floating landmass, composed of countless island-like terrains suspended in the air. Each island was colossal in size. Upon them stood enormous buildings, thousands of meters tall ancient halls towering altars, and blood-red spires that reached toward the sky, each emanating terrifying fluctuations of power. At that very moment, the arrival of the blood-red beam caused the entire floating landmass to tremble faintly. An ominous premonition silently spread through the blood god 5 continents. A storm was coming. The most eye-catching structure among the floating islands was a colossal pavilion that towered tens of thousands of meters into the sky. Ancient and majestic, it radiated an indescribable pressure. Suspended beneath its roof hung a massive blood-red bell, its surface carved with countless ancient runes that pulsed faintly like a living heartbeat. This was the Blood God Bell, a divine artifact that had stood watch over the clan for countless ages. Armored figures streaked across the heavens, each radiating formidable waves of spiritual power. Their movements were swift and decisive, leaving long after images in the air. They were the 6 heavenly guards of the Blood God clan. However, at this very moment, all 6 figures abruptly came to a halt. As if sensing something unimaginable, they simultaneously raised their heads and stared toward the sky. A terrifying blood-red glow surged forth from the void, its aura heavy with death and finality. That is, shock flickered across their eyes. Before anyone could react, the blood-red beam tore through the air and struck the massive bell. Boom! A deep, ancient toll resounded through space, carrying a weight that seemed to shake the souls of all who heard it. The bell's sound rolled across the heavens, echoing endlessly as it spread throughout the entire Blood God 5 continents. As the bell continued to ring, enormous blood-colored characters slowly emerged upon its surface, blazing with a cold, merciless light. Blood God Clan, 6th External Elder, Huang Yunpo fallen. The moment the final word appeared invisible, shockwaves rippled outward, sweeping across the floating landmass. In an instant, countless figures shot into the sky from every corner of the Blood God 5 continents, all rushing toward the colossal barrier and the Blood God Bell. When the members of the Blood God clan clearly saw the words upon the bell, their expressions changed drastically. What? Huang Yunpo is dead. How is this possible? Didn't he carry the clan's defensive divine domain with him? Shouts of disbelief and alarm rang out one after another, overlapping into a deafening uproar. Waves of discussion surged endlessly, spreading panic and confusion through the inner domain. An external elder had fallen, and the Blood God Bell had sounded. This was not merely the death of a powerhouse. It was a declaration that the Blood God clan's blood had been spilled. And from this moment on, the Blood God 5 continents would no longer know peace. Half a month later, at the edge of the Luo God domain, within the vast expanse of the Western Dao continent, stood the encampment of the Luo God camp. High atop a towering mountain peak, surrounded by drifting clouds and lingering spiritual power, a lone figure sat cross-legged in silent cultivation. He was dressed in black robes. Since the great battle half a month ago, Xiaoyan had remained here unmoving, as though isolated from the outside world. Back then, in order to suppress Huang Yunpo, Xiaoyan had swallowed several mid-grade emperor pills in succession, forcibly elevating his strength and unleashing his full power. At that cost, he had severely injured Huang Yunpo, pushing him to the brink of defeat. However, at the very final moment, Huang Yunpo chose the most extreme path. He self-detonated. The sudden explosion had caught Xiaoyan completely off guard. Although Xiaoyan reacted swiftly and suffered only light injuries, the price of that desperate act was still terrifying. In the chaos, Huang Yunpo's divine soul attempted to escape, seeking a final chance at survival. But fate was merciless. Luo Jutian arrived in an instant. With a single decisive strike, he crushed the fleeing divine soul, ending the battle once and for all. An 8th grade Supreme One who had only just stepped into that realm thus fell. After that, the battlefield turned into a one-sided massacre. All remaining forces of the Blood God camp, whether supreme experts or armies from the 3 heavenly states, were completely wiped out. Not a single survivor remained. That battle became the Luo God camp's greatest victory in the past 10 years. From that day onward, the Blood God camp vanished entirely from the Western Dao continent, as though it had never existed. Silence followed victory. Yet beneath that silence, an undercurrent of danger quietly brewed. At this moment, atop the mountain peak, Xiaoyan slowly opened his eyes. A vast, surging ocean of spiritual power flowed steadily within his body. His aura was deep, restrained, yet brimming with strength. Not only had he fully recovered from his injuries, he had even advanced further, reaching the peak of the 6th grade Supreme Realm. The after-effects of life and death combat had tempered him, refining both his cultivation and his will. Suddenly, a sharp sonic boom echoed across the sky. A figure descended from the distant horizon, stepping through the air as though space itself yielded beneath his feet. It was Gu Lushan. He landed lightly on the mountain peak, his expression solemn, eyes heavy with meaning. "You've been locked onto by the Blood God clan," Gu Lushan said gravely, his voice low and serious. Xiaoyan's expression did not change, though a faint glint flashed through his eyes. Gu Lushan continued watching him closely. "What do you plan to do now?" A brief silence followed. Then Gu Lushan spoke again, his tone shifting slightly, carrying a hint of sincerity. "Why not consider joining the Luo God clan as an external elder?" The mountain wind howled softly. Above them, clouds drifted slowly across the sky. And in that quiet moment, a choice that could shake the Western Heaven domain lay before Xiaoyan. That's all for today's content. See you in the next part. Support me by becoming a member. It will give me more motivation. Thank you so much.